Hello, class. My name is Joey. Today I'm going to be talking about fast fashion and how it affects the environment and people. Specifically, I'm going to be arguing that it should be regulated due to the environmental damage it causes, the overconsumption it promotes, and how it negatively affects workers and society. A statistic provided by the Environmental Protection Agency states that 92 million tons of textile waste is produced every year. Most of it ends up in landfills just sitting for decades, just waiting to decompose. Even more concerning, a lot of the times the clothing is only worn a few times before being thrown out. Imagine this. Imagine you go and you buy a shirt. You might wear it once, maybe a few times. Now imagine this same process repeated thousands of times across the following days. The clothing just doesn't disappear. It ends up in landfills just sitting, adding even more to the long-term damage. Today I'm going to be talking about what fast fashion is, the overconsumption it promotes, how it affects the environment, and how it negatively affects workers and society. Fast fashion is the business model where companies quickly and cheaply roll out clothing to meet continuing trends. Companies try to roll out the newest styles onto the market so consumers have access to what is new. According to an academic journal published by Chen and others, 2021, companies rely on cheap labor to keep costs low. Online shopping as well as social media play a pivotal role in this, making it popular, but also making it easier for consumers to keep on buying. For example, companies like Shein, Zara, H&M, they release thousands of new items every week, and consumers often feel pressured to keep on buying. They end up treating clothing as disposable as opposed to something that is truly valuable. But now that we know what fast fashion is, let's talk about how it affects the environment. Fast fashion has serious environmental consequences when it comes to pollution, waste, and water usage. Fast fashion requires large amounts of water to function, and this puts a huge strain on global water resource. According to an environmental report by the United Nations published in 2025, the dyeing process to create clothing releases toxic chemicals into water system, contaminating water supplies near factories. This hurts communities that live near the factories that rely on this water for drinking, cooking, cleaning, farming. This hurts their health as well as damages their way of life. Textile waste is another issue in fast fashion. 92 million tons is produced every year. Most of it ends up in landfills, but synthetic fibers are used and such as nylon, polyester. These do not break down easily. They end up sitting, adding even more environmental damage. Climate change is another issue. The transportation, as well as the production of clothing, increases carbon emissions. Any unsold clothing is burnt, releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Because clothing is so cheap, people buy more than they need, creating more waste and further damaging the environment. But the damage doesn't stop with just the environment. It affects people as well. Fast fashion has serious consequences when it comes to workers and society. Companies often rely on cheap labor from developing countries. According to an academic journal provided by Chen and others, published in 2021, workers will be forced to work long hours in unsafe conditions for very little pay. Imagine this. Imagine you go and you work a 12-hour shift, barely making enough to survive, just so someone on the other side of the world can buy cheap clothing. This system prioritizes profit over worker well-being. Fast fashion also adds to the global economic inequality. Rich countries benefit from cheap clothing while workers in poor countries are not fairly compensated. Large corporations, most of the profit goes to large corporations instead of the people who actually produce the clothing. Finally, fast fashion normalizes harmful societal views. It encourages overconsumption and normalizes people to keep on buying more than they need. This disconnects consumers from how their clothing is made, where it's made, and overall the impact their choices have. Because of this, there have been attempts to regulate the fashion industry. Legislation which was proposed in New York, such as the Fashion Sustainability and Social Accountability Act, which aims to hold companies transparent in their business practices. This includes how their clothes is made, where it's made, how it affects workers, how it affects the environment, the pollution, and much more. This shows that change is possible, but it also highlights how serious the problem has become. Because without regulation, companies will continue to further harm the environment. After looking at all these impacts, it's clear that fast fashion is more than just clothing. It's about the environment, the economy, and people around the world. Skeptics argue that fast fashion makes clothing affordable. I argue that the true cost comes in workers' rights violated, as well as the environment damage caused. Change is possible, and as consumers, we can be more conscious of what we buy, choosing more sustainable brands, but as well as not buying more than we need, not indulging in overconsumption. But for true change, we need to support legislation such as the Fashion Sustainability and Social Accountability Act. Because fast fashion may seem convenient, but it is a problem we can no longer ignore. All right, I think that's it.